She didn't reject you, she didn't disappear, she didn't cut you off, she stayed. She kept responding, kept checking in, kept letting you feel involved, and that's what confused you. Because rejection is easy to process. Silence has a shape. Distance makes sense. But presence keeps hope alive. When someone stays in your orbit, talks to you, shares pieces of their life with you, your mind fills in the meaning. You assume intention where there might only be access. You assume closeness means direction. But there's a difference most men don't learn early enough, a difference between being wanted and being kept. And once you see that difference clearly, you realize something uncomfortable. You didn't misunderstand her. You misunderstood the role you were playing. From the inside, it didn't feel confusing at first. It felt natural. You talked often, not surface-level conversation, real ones, the kind that stretch late, where neither of you notices the time passing. She told you about her stress, her doubts, parts of her past she doesn't usually bring up. She laughed with you easily, relaxed around you, let her guard down in ways that felt personal, and none of that felt casual. Because people don't open up like that, unless something is there. So you didn't feel like you were guessing, you felt like you were being patient. You assumed things were unfolding, not stalling, that this was how connection builds now. Slowly, organically, without pressure. You told yourself that clarity would come once enough trust was established, and because nothing felt overtly wrong, you stayed. You stayed present, available, consistent. You didn't push for definition, not because you were afraid, but because you didn't want to disrupt something that felt real. And the longer things stayed warm without a label, the easier it became to believe that the absence of direction was part of the process. That closeness was enough for now. That certainty would arrive later. What this actually was only becomes clear once you see how it ends. What made it convincing was how good it felt. Closeness creates warmth, and warmth creates trust. When someone feels comfortable with you, they relax around you. They stop performing, they stop editing themselves, they speak the way they don't speak to everyone. And your nervous system reads that as intimacy, because intimacy feels like progress. It feels like movement, even when nothing is actually moving. You felt included in her inner world, like your presence mattered, like things were easier for her when you were around. And in a way, they were. You listened without interrupting. You stayed steady when she vented. You absorbed uncertainty without demanding answers. You made space for her emotions without asking her to reorganize her life. That's powerful, because comfort doesn't ask for decisions. It doesn't force clarity. It doesn't require risk. Comfort just stays. So the connection stayed warm. It stayed familiar. It stayed undefined. And from the inside, that still feels like something is happening. Because no one teaches you that closeness and direction aren't the same thing. No one warns you that emotional access can exist without intention, so you assume time will do the work. That clarity will arrive naturally, that what feels good must be going somewhere. What you don't see yet is that you weren't moving forward. You were holding the position steady. There's a moment most men recognize once they hear it described. You don't lean in as much anymore. Not to test her, not to provoke a reaction, not to play some quiet game. You're just tired. Tired of initiating every conversation. Tired of carrying the emotional weight. Tired of being the one who keeps things warm when they start to cool. So you pull back slightly. You don't text as fast. You don't initiate as often. You let silence exist instead of rushing to fill it. And you tell yourself this is healthy. That if something is real, it won't disappear the moment you stop holding it up. That genuine interest will meet you halfway. At first, you expect her to notice, to ask what changed, to step forward, to close the gap you left. Because when two people are choosing each other, that's what happens. Effort gets matched, distance gets addressed, uncertainty gets named. But instead, something else happens. The connection loses energy. The warmth doesn't return on its own. The closeness doesn't reach for you. And slowly, quietly, something becomes impossible to ignore. It only felt close when you were supplying the momentum. When you stopped compensating, there was nothing underneath it. Not because you broke anything, but because nothing was moving on its own. This is where most men get it wrong. They think the distance happened because they pulled back. That if they had stayed consistent, patient, available just a little longer, things would have turned out differently. But the pullback didn't cause the shift, it revealed it. Because closeness that depends on your effort isn't mutual. It's maintained. As long as you were initiating, listening, absorbing the uncertainty, the connection stayed alive. Not because it was growing, but because you were sustaining it. Comfort can exist without choice. Someone can enjoy how you make them feel without reorganizing their life around you. They can stay close without moving forward. And as long as you're supplying the momentum, that difference stays hidden. But the moment you stop compensating, the structure shows itself. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just quietly. The effort doesn't come back, the direction doesn't clarify. Nothing steps forward to replace what you removed. And that's when the confusion changes shape. It's no longer, what did I do wrong? It becomes, why did this only feel close when I was holding it together? That question is uncomfortable because it forces you to see that the connection didn't fade. It was exposed. Here's the part most men don't arrive at until much later. She didn't pull away because you pulled back. She pulled away because the closeness was being held together by your effort. You weren't building something together. You were maintaining something alone. Comfort can exist without choice. Commitment can't. Commitment creates direction. It reduces ambiguity. It changes behavior over time. Comfort stays open-ended. It feels warm. It feels familiar. And it never asks for a decision. That's why this hurt the way it did. Not because you lost her, but because you realized how much of the connection was resting on you. And once you see that clearly, the questions don't disappear. They change. You stop asking, why wasn't I enough? And start asking, why was I giving commitment-level energy to something that never chose me? That shift matters because it moves the focus off your worth and onto the structure of the dynamic. You weren't rejected. You were useful without being selected. And that distinction changes everything. You stop negotiating your place. You stop explaining away ambiguity. You stop mistaking warmth for direction. Because being chosen doesn't feel unclear. It doesn't require patience. It doesn't require interpretation. And it never asks you to hold something together by yourself. If this video put words to something you felt but never fully named, if you recognized yourself in the moments that quietly cost you, subscribe, not for motivation, not for noise, but for clarity. Because the more clearly you understand these dynamics, the less time you'll ever spend carrying something that was never moving forward, quietly.